Hey y'all, how's everybody doing out there? Headphones on if you're trying to listen to stage one. All right, we have our last breakout session for today. I hope everybody is so excited because I definitely am. Today we're going to be hearing about thinking outside the tree, using workflow graphs to transform the client experience. So everybody please give a warm welcome to Robert Slaughter from our Morgan Stanley client.
Thank you kindly. They were just telling me back there I'm going to be the warm-up act for Lolo, so this is like the most, accomplished I've ever been in my life here. So I really appreciate y'all coming. I know we're getting ready to close up, get some drinks. I'm going to be kind of going through here quick, but I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to go through this all. You are seeing it correctly. First question I always get is, yes, that is my real last name. So it's probably the only thing that you will take away from this and remember. But I work with E-Trade and Morgan Stanley. So I started E-Trade about 6 years ago, product management. We got acquired by Morgan Stanley. I work specifically in the stock group. So any of you out there that get stock grants, whether private, public, you have like E-Trade platform or all the other major brokers kind of do this. But essentially what we're trying to do with our platform is get people stock. So that's the area I specialize in. That's what I'm passionate about. Essentially, you go into etrade.com, you could place trades, do all of that. But on the back end, when you receive stock, your company has to manage a massive amount of this data, right? So your vestings, whether you are, when you started, if there's any terminations, what kind of tax jurisdiction you're in, you're moving around, all these different kinds of things that we have the administrator track. And essentially that's our platform. We'll kind of go into all of it here, but I'll just give you a quick little rundown. But all those types of equity is what we support. Name of our game essentially is removing roadblocks. So you've got companies that want to grant grants, and obviously you want to receive them. And then our business model is we take those into the account, and then that's how we sort of fund our technology and our business. So I think Michael Scott used to call those a win-win-win. So everybody is happy in this scenario. Thank you very much. And by the way, I always say, give your stock administrator a shout out when you can. They are doing a lot of work, you'll see, because it's always good to, the people that are giving you stock, those are the ones that you want to get in their good graces. So we'll kind of go through all of it, but that's our background and that's what we do. Now, essentially, what's our product and how does it work? I think this is important to kind of just give you the quick tour of what it is and some of the challenges we face. It's like that thing, history doesn't repeat, but it rhymes. I'm finding that with a massive company that we're in, it is essentially like being in a country. There's all kinds of different teams everywhere. This platform is actually 30 years old, the stock administration platform. So it started off in Silicon Valley. You've got stock options. They essentially just lived in like legal agreements, right? And then they sort of gravitated to spreadsheets and those kinds of things. Fast forward about 30 years, and these systems are essentially like 1,000 tons each. If you look at stock-based compensation, there's a huge intersection in all these different places. You've got executives managing their plans in the board. You've got investors, comp design, global taxation. So obviously, if you're getting stock, somebody wants a cut, and that somebody is pretty much every jurisdiction you touch during that time frame. So as you can imagine, but then we even got really big things coming these days, like say on pay and CEO pay ratio. So sort of measuring how people are getting paid relative to the CEO, right? You've got to measure the stock somehow. We've got things like pay equity, right? Is there pay equity in the company? It's not as easy as just looking at salary, right? You've got to look at who's holding, how long are they holding, when do they exercise, lots of those kind of things come into play. And essentially the way I describe it is all these different groups, like if you look at people who do like board meetings, people who are doing tax calculations, and people who are doing pay equity studies, these are just very different people. They have different expertise, they're doing different things, they have different sort of mindset, different approach to how they do it all. And what tends to happen is we've got a lot of motivation to get all of these features built. So we don't have any trouble with investment in getting features built, but you get this situation where sort of everyone huddles together and then it's like break and everyone kind of runs in their own direction at about 100 miles an hour. And we tend to find that it's very difficult to get all of these people talking, right? And this happens in our product big time. Each one of these rabbit holes that we go down, it's enough for more than one person to begin with, let alone me going down every single other person's rabbit hole. But the clients have to manage all of it, right? So your stock administrator who's probably working as fast as people at Pendo work, they're kind of those kinds of people that are just kind of very snappy, moving very quick. But they have essentially have to go through this platform in all of these areas. And so they want a seamless experience that's joining up multiple people's sort of features, right? So what did that translate for us? And I'll give you kind of our dilemma. And I'm hoping that you're going to see some themes in some of your platforms. Every platform is different. But essentially, we have essentially a tab-based user interface. You'll see this a lot. Like we have it vertical tabs that you kind of drop down. If you look at Pendo, right, it has those on the left. And just over the past 30 years, these have gotten just deep. I mean, there's just so many different questions that you kind of have to get to a feature. So you'll click on like accounts and kind of navigate down through several clicks to get to a feature. And then you go, swim all the way back up, go to another area, swim all the way back down. You'll see there's a lot of platforms like maybe like Outlook or Microsoft or Excel. Those kind of have that similar model, right? And what we tended to find is that with our analysis of the data, it almost looked like things were not, like we were getting bad data because clients were spending so much time swimming down, swimming up, swimming over, swimming up, coming down, and they were kind of doing a lot of back and forth in our system. And we really just wanted to figure out how to minimize that. So I'll talk about what we did and some of the insights that we got there, but essentially when we got Pendo probably like 3 years ago, it's just been like a mad dash to figure out how people are navigating through this system and what we can do to improve that. Because again, fewer clicks, the better it is for everyone. I think it's funny when you look at your adoption, we'll look at two similar features where one is just for whatever reason is behind a click, it's below a scroll, or whatever, it requires some sort of little speed bump in the way. We're taking hits of like 20, 30% adoption in those cases. It's pretty amazing. It's kind of like the meme, who would win a multi-million-dollar project or a single click? And you find that it's pretty wild how much that comes into play. So we essentially have a combination of dashboard, paths, and trends that we use to sort of watch the flow around our system and sort of minimize this. Funnels is an interesting thing that we cannot and do not use, and there's a very important reason behind that. But I'll kind of go through, how we're using these and how we've been able to essentially slash the time that our administrators and users are working in the system on any given process by about half. So it's pretty monumental what we've done. It's nice when you start from a place where there's a lot of friction because then you remove it and you get to be the hero. So, but essentially paths. What we're looking here is who's jumping from what to where. So let's just say you've got a restricted stock grant and you've got an option. They're two completely different equity types. And what we found is that clients are spending a lot of time jumping back and forth from these. You probably can't see sort of on this here, but what's happening is it just looks very odd that they're going from awards to options, participants, awards, options, back and forth. And so we essentially just looked at that problem and said, what do we do to prevent? We don't really want to prevent them from doing that, because what happens is you'll get a grant and for whatever reason you'll have something funny that happens with your situation, whatever country you're in, or maybe you had a particular bonus or something different. We want them to be able to do that and navigate that quickly. And so we're going to talk about kind of how we got there. But essentially the conclusions that we reached is we have feature bloat. If you look in the dictionary, feature bloat, we are going to be like the poster child for it. We just have so many features. And interestingly, almost all of it was getting used by Pendo, but it was very customized in terms of how they were getting to those things. That's the conclusion number one. Conclusion number two, our feature set is just vastly larger than any single client is going to be able to use. It's just the nature of it. If you grant equity in Israel, you got to do it. If you don't, there's all this huge checklist of things that you don't have to do. And so I almost even, one of the sort of analogies we use internally is it's almost like the universe of Spotify songs, and that's like our feature set. So if you look at Spotify, think of someone who you have like very similar musical tastes to, okay? What are the chances that you will have an identical playlist to them? It's very unlikely. You'll have some songs that are similar. You'll probably have a lot of similarities. They're going to be out of order. You're going to have those songs that you like that are just nobody else is listening to, but we still have to support, aka those features that are very unique and very customized. And so we needed to sort of solve this in the same way that a lot of these other platforms like Spotify, YouTube, Netflix kind of have to do. So, wow, without further ado, so what did we do? Um, Going back to that sort of, if you think about that sort of tree-based navigation where you're kind of going here, swimming down, essentially what we did is we just switched our model and we kind of gave an outline like this. We have some tools that help us map out, where the different features are in the set. Our tech team is very good at understanding how flow is going through the system, but our engineers really don't have that same user focus. They can say they're moving through these 10 steps efficiently, but they may not say, why are we doing steps 3 through 8? If you think about how that kind of works. So what you're seeing here is sort of the way that we graph this out. Okay, and all I've done is just taken that tree model and just kind of spread it around. If you sat down and looked at the exact same thing, but we just sort of lay it out in a circular pattern. And then we look at sort of the edges or the perimeter of this sort of space. You can look at it for one particular product or the entire system as a whole, although it's going to be pretty big. And the idea is you're going to see that all these feature sets are essentially kind of orphans. They are not connected to anything else. There's one way to get in and there's one way to get out. But when our users are going through, they're having to jump from feature to feature. So if you're going, from step 1, what we really want to do is send them all the way around to step 2. So, and then from there, step 3 and step 4 and so on. And essentially what we can do is we can take what used to be essentially 4 clicks in, 4 clicks back, 4 clicks in, 4 clicks back, reduce all of that down to just a few. Essentially, there's a couple tools we have that I'll kind of go through that we use to do that. But this is something that allows us to take our feature sets from all these different groups and start forcing them to talk. People who are doing options and people who are doing purchase plans. Although we want to talk and we talk about collaboration all the time and everybody is for it, when it really comes down to it, it doesn't happen. And so essentially we need some sort of enforcement mechanism to do this. And essentially what we started off here is we started saying, okay, each feature needs to be connected to at least one other feature. So your feature, if you're working on, you've got sort of a parallel product manager, a requirement is that you have to connect to at least one other one, and then by extension, you'll have other features connecting into yours, and there's sort of a win-win here, right? Where like I scratch your back, you scratch mine, we kind of get mutual adoption. But the problem with this approach is you can't scale it. So as soon as we start building these connections between these two features in, by the time you get that in, the whole tree has grown even more so from there. And so we really had to figure out an automated way to do this, and we're using workflows, essentially. I saw like Okta had this, Salesforce has this, where you can find sort of a drag and drop environment where you can have clients sort of drag one step, connect it to another, connect it to another. And so instead of having to kind of swim up and down this whole sort of UI interface, what they can do is essentially limit down, and now all of a sudden all of these excess features that were cluttering up their space and their work now just start evaporating. You come in and now you're doing you're just flow, right? And so what's very interesting about this is that not only does it allow us to connect up and get these other product teams sort of like working together, but it has a very serious enforcement mechanism, which is the #1 enforcement mechanism we have for anything, which is clients. So now when clients start creating these workflows of going through these 20, 30-step processes it takes to deliver you shares, now if there's a feature missing from that flow, that product manager is going to hear about it. So you sort of have this like longer term enforcement of these different features coming together. And I just can't emphasize enough how valuable these kinds of things are to look at these drag and drop environments. Every system's a little different, and it may not work obviously for whatever your situation is, but what I did find from this is having at least one single product that strings all of the other products together. And it's just been remarkable how we can take all of these very disparate people, right? We've got the people who are doing executive trades and making a platform for that, people who are doing taxation systems and accounting systems, and now they are essentially kind of forced to be strung together when naturally, let's just be real, as much as we talk about collaboration, it just does not happen in practice. And so that's something that's been very cool for us to be able to learn how to do. Now, simplification, sort of just, it's an all hands effort. I try to be very clear. I'm a very technical person. I've got a background in sort of technical finance, and I have no skills in UI. So what I might say is, I need these two things connected, or we need to have these two sort of speak together in this way. But it really takes a competent and skilled UX person to figure out a way to do that. And it's just been very mind-blowing to me to see all the different creative ways that we can fit, either a link or a drop-down or a condition that then presents an option or a pop-up to the user. And so our UX team has essentially been very, very instrumental in this. And we've just got sort of this sort of circular flow. The users talk to us and say where their pain points are. We look in Pendo and see where they're getting stuck by walls or not adopting features. I analyze all that information. All of our product managers analyze that. We work with the engineering team to build that connectivity, so on the back end, so that these different features can talk to each other. And then our UX team figures out a really creative way of getting that in the interface so that we can pack all of this stuff in without having feel like you've got a big, cluttered system together. So very, interesting project and approach that we've been taking to do this. And I think it's something that is really going to benefit the long run of all of this. Now, the final kind of frontier here is, I think initially it's just getting that connectivity, getting these sort of orphan features. Very easy to do that with paths, right? You can just see, are these two getting adoption and are they sharing data or information? And one thing that I do like to point out as well, when you're trying to connect up these different features from different product teams, it's not enough just to have those features connected, right? What do we all care about? It's usage weighted, right? And so how do we do that? That's exactly what the purpose of the Pendo paths is. So we can see, okay, there are 3 major sources of users coming into the feature, and there are like 2 major sources of them leaving. And this kind of flow rate you can almost control, because what you can say is, if we've only got 1 way to get into the feature and 5 ways to get out, or conversely 5 ways to get in and only 1 way to get out, you can see how it kind of either traps you or allows you to leave. And so we've been able to use this approach kind of across our whole platform ecosystem. So when we've got products that we need to deprecate, right, we can look at this sort of flow. How many things are coming into that? How many sort of paths do you have into the feature? And if you want to deprecate the product, you just make it so there's very few paths in, right? And then you make a lot of paths out. So what does that look like? Oh, here's an alternative feature you can use. Here's some other way you can do this. Give them many, many, many links out. And that allows us to sort of, in practice, deprecate things without having to go to a client, because at the end of the day, we really just don't like going to them. You could be some random company using one thing and you're the only one, and we're just so afraid to just boot people off. So we can kind of naturally push them away. And then on the other hand, if you want people to come into something, right? So shopping carts are a clear example of this. And there's sort of an ethical boundary. I try not to go too far on this, which is, sometimes when you're in Amazon, all of a sudden it's like, bam, you're in a shopping cart. Like, how did I get here, right? And how do I get out? I don't know. I got to X out the browser. So try not to go that direction too much where you try to trap people into a feature. But it's definitely been sort of an interesting exercise to look at that path weighted, sort of in route and then sort of the out route. Now, the final thing I kind of wanted to go through here is what we came to really appreciate is we're tracking, when we got into Pendo and we kind of tagged all of our features, and then right off the bat, you have the sticker shock of your adoption, and you kind of have to deal with that and figure that out, and you kind of see all the clicks that are going on. It's actually even substantially bigger than that because we have sort of like our whole training, right, of all the 30 years of different tax guidance and accounting guidance and comp design and all these different things that administrators need to be able to learn how to do equity. Because what's, especially in these days with the IPOs, right, you have the situation where people, you're a payroll manager or you're working in HR and then you go public and then boom, congratulations, you are now managing stock compensation. And in case you can't, imagine, nobody wants to mess up stock comp. So it's one thing to miss a paycheck, but if you send someone the wrong number of shares, something settles wrong. And so our administrators are always like, frankly, living in a little bit of fear of some sort of thing messing up. And so training has to be really accessible. And just as it is, this all got started a long time ago, and we've got an entire sort of training system, which essentially gives you that same sort of tree-based navigation that our system has. You say, okay, I'm looking at options, tax qualified options, or I need to look at tax options in Canada, and the sort of the selections go on. And so what we're able to do now with the guides is actually connect those different features together. So if we've got like 1,000 features in the system, we can use a guide to directly connect to that piece of training. And now we've essentially eliminated going to a whole nother thing and an entire trip down that decision tree. So it's been a really interesting exercise, and we're just kind of excited to continue on this with Pendo and analyze this further. It's a big cave, and I know a lot of us have this sort of situation that we're dealing with, but I can tell you if we're able to do it and connect all these different products and features together, I guarantee you can do it because there's just been so much there to it. So with that, I'm running a little early, which is great because I'm holding up Lolo here. So I really appreciate it. It's been an excellent day. Thank you to the Pendo team. I'm very inspired by you all, and I'm looking forward to grabbing some drinks. So with that, thank you.